All right, ahead of the summit, I knew that the pressure was on when I heard that Dennis Rodman was going to be in Singapore, whether he'll have any role in this. But if you think about it, he's one of the few Americans who Kim Jong-un has had a long-standing relationship with. They like each other, and they get along, and maybe he'll have an active role in this, or we could be looking at a future cabinet official. I don't know. I do not know, but I do want to get the read of what's on stake here with Christian Wright, the former Trump and Bush 43 senior State Department advisor, Tara Mola, back with us, former CIA military analyst. We'll know a week from now how this whole goes down. Is it your sense, Tara, that the Rodman presence, I mean, I don't know who asked for whom, or maybe Rodman came on his own, but that was an interesting development. What do you think?
It's an interesting development. At the end of the day, you know, sort of the logistics on the hotel that it's at, the food that's served, if Dennis Rodman's there or not, those may be factors that play a role, but what's really going to matter here are whether or not we can get both parties to agree upon a phased nuclear negotiation framework here, and we can get both sides to get the North Koreans to agree upon a framework where there's denuclearization that's both complete, irreversible, and verifiable. And I'm a little bit less concerned about these other factors. I mean, if it helps to have Dennis Rodman there because he has a history with the North Koreans, and that's going to make for a lighter node and a mode of, you know, a more friendly atmosphere, then great. But at the end of the day, you need the meticulous groundwork in place. You need the proper, you know, information being briefed to President Trump, and you need to have a clear strategy in place before this meeting. We're not going to have a treaty signed next week that solves this problem overnight.
Well, I don't know about that, Tara, because once I saw Dennis Rodman there, I'm convinced we indeed will have a treaty signed. But Christian, White, let me get your sense of this. You know, when you think of Reykjavik with Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev, that spanned several days, and even with that, Ronald Reagan still walked away, no deal. This is one and done. That's enormous pressure. So to Tara's point about at least getting the framework going for future talks, which I think is the gist of what they would at best want to do, what do you see happening?
Yeah, I think Tara's right that a framework would be the key deliverable from this, but I don't think it's one and done. I think actually the signaling from the president, from other people in the White House with whom I've spoken, is that this is the beginning of a process. You know,
I know it's the beginning of a process, but it's one and done as far as the time in Singapore, right? Or do you see them staying longer there as they hash things out?
You know, I think the president will determine fairly early on if Kim is serious, if he really is going to make a fundamental change, come in from the cold, do things differently or not. And so, frankly, I don't see this being very long. I think a meeting of the minds and then hashing out what that means in words, but it could lead to other summits. I doubt they'd necessarily be in Singapore. Hard to tell. Yeah. But as with Reagan, where there was one in Geneva, then Reykjavik, then Moscow, then Washington, then New York, I think this might be an ongoing process.
You know, I was just curious with you, too, the other possibility is to do something out of the blue that might end the state of war that's existed between our countries now for the better part of, what, 70 years. And that would be a big deal in and of itself. What do you think of that?
Right. I mean, there are a lot of wild card factors going into the summit, including the personalities of the people who are going to be at the table. But I think what you've seen over the past month, and I think this is to the administration's credit, is they sort of came in with these big expectations when they did this impromptu press conference about sort of solving, you know, nuclear peace in one sit down. And I think they've walked back from that. I think they've sort of recognized that this is going to be a phased approach. We're going to need to see sort of a give and take between the North Koreans and the United States. And at the end of the day, what the key issue here is going to be the trust and verification process. The North Koreans can agree to everything we want next week, but so what? We need to be able to verify, trust but verify, or as has been said with the North Koreans, don't trust and still continue to verify, because they've been known to renege and cheat on previous occasions.
Yeah. All right, guys, thank you very, very much. Lee Carter is someone who polls these things, and we make a big deal of these kind of agreements, even if they come to pass. But even Jimmy Carter, 1978, with the